it's me, Andrzej, and these are the Bimotas. I can get straight to the point. This is probably the motorcycle that will go down in history as the fastest, most powerful motorcycle ever in the entire history of motorcycling. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's the case. I am, of course, talking about road legal motorcycles. That's the point. Bimots, now it has been partially bought by Kawasaki, and that's great, because otherwise there would simply be no Bimota. The truth is that the first Bimota motorcycles in 1978 also had Kawasaki engines. So, in fact, this story has come full circle. They use engines, electronics, and all components that must be homologated. It's simply about costs. Bimota would not be able to bear the cost of homologation on its own. Motorcycles. One representative even said that they had an investor recently. He came and said, we have 20 million euros here, we can invest. And they said that with 20 million euros, we wouldn't be able to do anything. We wouldn't be able to make an engine or electronics. So fortunately, the story is straightforward. Because if the first one had the Kawasaki engine, and now this one also has not Kawasaki, everything is fine. But what am I getting at? This motorcycle, because it's limited to 250 units, can still be sold as a machine with Euro 4. So using the H2 engine, it has about 230 horsepower, but the next model will already have to meet Euro 5 standards. And in that one, the engine will have about 200 horsepower. And I ask, okay, but if we take out the exhaust, you know, we live in Poland, we take out the exhaust, turn a blind eye to a few things, will we still have that huge power? No, simply not, because the new engine is completely different inside. And it simply won't generate that wild power anymore, and nothing else will generate that kind of power either. Well, who will make a motorcycle that meets the standards, emission standards? I mean, an engine that fits in the frame well, there's no frame here, and will be that powerful. I don't think anyone will make one anymore. Well, there's the new Ford 4R, but it claims, I think, 230 horsepower, but that's in the racing version, with a racing exhaust, not street legal. And this is a street legal motorcycle. I feel a bit strange about this thought. Well, but I'm glad I got to ride this motorcycle. To be important, I mean, to be clear, it's not like these are motorcycles, that this is an H2 in a different package, and this is a Z1000SX in a different package. No, absolutely not. Here, only the engines and electronics are used. And of course, there have to be gauges. I'll get to that in a moment. The rest is manufactured and assembled in Italy. That's it, period. I don't know, maybe you know the Bosch ABS module. It's produced somewhere else, but everything else in these motorcycles, as the gentleman mentioned, especially when it comes to the Tesi, is either made of carbon or is milled from aluminum. And then we look at it, maybe I'll throw in a picture of what the chassis looks like, because there's actually no frame here. Everything is bolted directly to the engine. There's a single plate at the back and one at the front. There are these brackets and the front swing arm, and the rear swing arm is bolted to the engine as well, just to make it even wilder. Both swing arms are, of course, milled from aluminum, but the front one connects the right side to the left. They're joined by this huge carbon block, which is glued together, just like in aviation. That's because there's a linkage here that goes to the back, since the front suspension shock absorber is located at the rear. Next to the chamber from the rear suspension, there's also a linkage that pulls the shock absorber, and thanks to this, we get damping at the front. This is so that the right and left sides are balanced. The center has to be connected with carbon, because carbon is much stiffer. It's kind of absurd when it comes to a twisting rod like this. And here we have this little zigzag. We turn it with this thing I have. These little zigzag levers, which twist with it. With the front wheel, listen, this is art. It's simply automotive art. Sure, there are some arguments. I've heard some arguments in favor of this suspension, that it has its advantages, and an extraordinary argument for using this kind of suspension. In a motorcycle like this, it's the braking, because attention. We can adjust how this motorcycle dives, because it's not like with the GS where you brake and the bike doesn't dive. No, it does dive. What's more, here we can change the swing arm pivot point to set how the motorcycle will dive. But at the same time, it can't dive like this, and you can't make it do that. Stoppies on this motorcycle, honestly, I haven't even tried it, because there really wasn't time for that. And anyway, as he said, it's not possible, maybe it is. But the point is that when you brake on this motorcycle, it's much easier to maintain it. It maintains its geometry. And in fact, it keeps the rear wheel on the ground much more easily, so we can use more of the rear brake and calibrate it. They did ABS tests and compared the H2 with the Tesi, and it turned out that the H2 can transfer 20% more braking force too, which means it can stop faster. In a motorcycle that has a 230 horsepower supercharger, that seems like a pretty logical argument. Besides that, we can adjust the height of the entire motorcycle, basically everything. The adjustments here are, what are they called? Eccentrics? I think so, yeah, really cool adjustments. These allow us to set the front or rear of the motorcycle higher or lower. We adjust the foot pegs and levers the same way. Everything is adjusted in the same manner. The point is, when we raise or lower the motorcycle, we don't disrupt its geometry. So it's not like the wheelbase trail or any angles changer. We simply raise or lower the center of gravity, and that's it. If we want a motorcycle that drops into corners more easily, then we set it higher. If we want one that's more stable, then we set it lower. Not bad. What I have to say is, when I first rode this motorcycle, well, the front end, you know, it's something completely different. And it felt strange to me. But eventually, once I got used to it a bit, the handling is very, very, very similar to the traditional motorcycles we know, honestly. You don't really feel it. You don't feel the front end or anything about the grip, just like with a traditional motorcycle, because that's what we're used to. But it's not like this motorcycle is just weird, has strange suspension, and simply rides in a strange way, period. You can actually ride this motorcycle really fast, extremely fast, and it changes direction very willingly even. I felt like I could throw it into corners even faster, but you know, I just didn't have any trust in that suspension yet. It's just Bristol S22. The motorcycle is quite heavy, and you know, I was a bit scared because this is a machine worth 70,000 euros. So I was simply afraid to look for that limit because honestly, what's the point? This motorcycle isn't going to be ridden on track days well, maybe from time to time, because that was fun. But it's not just for admiring, because today we were sitting in a cafe looking at this motorcycle, and you just keep looking, and you can't get enough of it. Why does it handle so well? Is it also lighter compared to the H2? Because it's 20 kilograms lighter, 20 kilograms. This motorcycle, ready to ride with half a tank of fuel, weighs 208 kilograms. Listen, that's really not much. And here, honestly, there's nothing except the basic things like the switches for the turn signals and the starter. But that's just part of the package, like the engine and the gauges. And there are mirrors. All the other parts are either made of carbon or milled aluminum. Everything is extremely lightweight. And what's the best part? Everything is assembled by hand in Rimini, which already brings a sense of joy, because it's pure joy. Since today we met those people from Bimota. You and the mechanics who helped us with the motorcycles today, these are the people who physically assemble these bikes. Each motorcycle is assembled by one person, and then quality control is done by another person. How many people work at Bimota in total? Almost as many fingers as I can show, about this many. 12 people, and that includes designers, engineers, and mechanics. Here, everyone does not everything, but each person has many tasks. For example, the designer, the one responsible for styling, also oversees the production of carbon fiber. Because everything is made by subcontractors, they just assemble it all together here. So when you listen to this story, it's really uplifting. It's full of emotion. It's not just, you know, business for the sake of business, where you have to force things. These are people who genuinely want to build exceptional motorcycles. And as for more exceptional motorcycles, well, there simply aren't any. I really like it. These guys, they didn't talk about power at all. They didn't give us the weight. I had to ask about all of that because it's just not important to them. Look at how it looks, how it rides. That's what matters, not the dry specs. But just so you know, it's actually 208 kilograms. And get this. When you buy this motorcycle, you get a full aero exhaust system, no catalytic converters, completely straight through. I saw it. That pipe is like this. It doesn't actually add much power, just about 3 or 4 horsepower, but it does shave off another 14 kilograms from the bike. If this machine was simple enough, it would have to be unbelievably fast. Because let's face it, Modena is just too tight. It was too tight for this motorcycle. That's why it was like that. Riding it is a bit tricky because the corners are tight and the throttle response, you know, going from close to open with an engine, with a supercharger. For an engine like this, it's smooth, but ultimately it's still twitchy. With a lot of motorcycles, you know, every time you open the throttle, it was like, Andrzej, don't close it, so the weight doesn't shift to the front, so the front doesn't slip out somehow. So you don't crash on such an exceptional machine, oh, sorry. The fuel tank is made of steel because they had to take the bottom from the H2 and then weld it on weld it on. You know, the bottom is from the H2 tank and then the rest is pressed and welded. The rear swing arm is also made from 3 components, then welded together. It's just absolutely mind-blowing, truly and utterly mind-blowing. You look at it and you just can't possibly get enough of its incredible presence. It would be truly amazing to have this magnificent machine in your very own garage, to take it out for an exhilarating ride now and then, and perhaps even get a little bit scared by its raw power. This is a completely different story here, because this is the exceptional KB4, and this particular motorcycle is truly something special. I fell in love with it when it comes to riding, because the philosophy behind this machine was, let's build a 600. So they started building a 600, but, well, it didn't have enough power and not enough torque. We want to have more torque. All right, so let's take a 1000 engine. Okay, so we're making a 1000 engine. They put in a 1000 engine, but these are the kind of stories where, well, I won't say because we did it, but something didn't work out here, because the idea was for this motorcycle to be very short, to be a very agile, great handling machine. So they took that engine, and it turned out the engine was quite big. It didn't fit the radiator in the front teeth. The motorcycle is supposed to be short. The swing arm has to be long, so the bike doesn't lift onto the rear wheel too much and stays stable. So the radiator didn't fit either. So they thought, okay, let's put the radiator in the back, but that didn't work. Either of these are the kind of stories. So they put the radiator in the back, but then you have to get air to it somehow, and that's what explains why the motorcycle has that side profile. All of that is an air intake which goes here, 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 then up, and from above it pushes air into the radiator, which is underneath there. And it expels the air out there. And everything has been tested and it works. And also, we pushed this motorcycle hard today and it absolutely didn't overheat. And thanks to the fact that we managed to do all this, the motorcycle is so compact, it turns so well, it has all-in suspension, milled triple clamps. It's the same throughout, everything is either carbon or milled, the swing arm is fully milled, the frame is made of chrome molybdenum. The trellis frame was also created and designed by Bimota. Everything is made in-house, is that right? Yes, exactly. Once again, only the engine is from Kawasaki, everything else is Italian engineering, and it works. It really works brilliantly, not just in terms of form, but also when it comes to the riding experience. The weakest thing about this motorcycle, unfortunately, is the gauges, which just don't fit at all, like a saddle on a pig. You have this beautiful motorcycle, but you know, he also looks at it. At first, I look at it and say, Jesus Mary, what a weirdo. But the longer you spend time with it, the better it gets. And when you sit here on the seat, which is leather, and you look at the fairing, which is very old school, vintage, like on old racing motorcycles, you get transported and say, wow, this is it. But then you turn on the gauges and the magic kind of disappears. But the problem is that the gauges are also a homologation requirement. Let Bimota develop a bit more, and maybe, just maybe, we'll see some changes in this area. But when it comes to the ride itself, it's really short, compact, and just dives into the corners. At some point, I started riding this motorcycle a bit like a race machine and had to hold myself back. I was like, hey, wait, Andrzej, you don't want to mess anything up because everything here is carbon and pretty expensive. The only downside when it comes to the riding experience is the ABS. Because Japanese ABS is just totally rubbish. And that's a bit of a letdown because we know the Italians have the best electronic systems. The best ABS, the best traction control. But here we have an Italian motorcycle with Japanese systems. And, you know, on the street, it works everywhere because it doesn't get in the way. But on the track, when you're really going for it, you know, the bike wants to brake because you already have the best brakes there are, right? Great suspension, great geometry, you want to dive into a corner, but then you have to fight with the ABS. And that just gets a bit annoying. You simply have to turn off the ABS if you want to ride this thing. Fast on the track, but I don't know if anyone will actually ride this fast on the track. I mean, I would ride it fast on the track because it just begs to be ridden on the track. You know, it's like this. It's a 1000cc engine, 143.5. Well, it doesn't really matter how much horsepower. A little over 180 kilograms dry weight. And this motorcycle has torque. It comes out of corners really nicely, very linear, accelerates great quick shifter up and down. But it doesn't have that kind of torque, you know, like those new liter bikes, which are awesome. But you really have to know what you're doing to fully open up a new liter bike because they just eat up everything like crazy, tires and so on. And here you have, you know, a 600 with low-end torque because the geometry is like a 600. It's even 10 millimeters shorter than the ZX6R and about 5 centimeters shorter than the ZX10R. So it's agile, incredibly so. You just give it gas. Coming out of a corner, it just goes. And at the top, it's not weak 140 something G horsepower. That's not little. It really picks up speed, but you can keep the throttle open without any major fear. Well, that's it. The rest, Erlins, not Erlins. Tires, wheels, QTOs, everything. There are some ugly things like the turn signals, but again, that's about homologation. But apart from the gauges, I don't think I'd change anything here. What I just remembered regarding the radiator, when I was talking about the radiator, it's the radiator here. This is a great motorcycle for riding in winter because I went out and during the first session, I thought, damn, there must be heated grips here because my hands feel so warm. I started looking around, searching for a button, but there isn't one. And then it turns out that the radiator on this motorcycle is right here underneath. So when it blows air, it warms up your hands. Seriously, you ride and your hands are warm? Italian engineering. I love the way they approach things. Something's coming at me here because this motorcycle was supposed to look a bit different. It was supposed to have a single air intake, but it turned out there wasn't enough air going to the radiator. All right, so we'll do this here, do it like this, do it like that. And in the end, it all works. This motorcycle won't be a limited edition, but, well, it does limit them a bit. The factory says they're able to build about 20 motorcycles a month, and they hope that they'll all make their way out into the world. I don't see any reason why not. So 250 units will be built, and apparently there are still some available for purchase. And as an interesting tidbit, each one has a number here at the front, and you can actually choose that number yourself. If there's still a number available, you can choose it yourself, and it's right here. It's on the exhaust. You also get it with accessory exhaust, and in a few other places as well. If you ask, they'll even tell you which gentleman assembled your motorcycle. You can come here, shake his hand, and have a coffee with him. Really great, truly, truly wonderful people. It's an incredible story. At first glance, you might think, okay, it's not really that Italian vibe because we're used to V-twins. But for example, here, there's a special Arrow accessory exhaust, which is routed in such a way that it gives the bike the characteristic sound of a carbureted motorcycle. And you see, these are the kinds of things they think about. Here, well, here it's all about the power, because you get something crazy and it's instantly exciting and it doesn't bother you. You don't care whether it's Japanese or not, because this is a supercharged engine. And besides that, like I said, this story has come full circle and let it keep going because the people are great, those 12 people who build these motorcycles, and let there be 13 or 14 of them in the future. They're doing a great job because I'm super happy and I'd ride this on the track. And around the track too, that's what I'm afraid of. But I'd look at it a lot. I'd look at it a lot. All the technical data and similar things, photos, just a lot of stuff, everything will be in the magazine. That's it, I guess that's all. Take care, bye. I'm scared to death. Too much power, too expensive a bike. So much fun.